Hello, everyone. Welcome to another show of New Hampshire Citizens for Progress. Today going to be doing a show on democracy defense. What is going on in regards? Are you concerned about your vote getting counted? Are you concerned about not a smooth transfer of power? We haven't been promised that yet. So I'd like to introduce Brian Beihl from Open Democracy.
Nice to be here, Richard. Always glad to come to Manchester for you. Open Democracy is in Concord, and we're a nonpartisan nonprofit that was founded by Granny D. She's a New Hampshire woman who's kind of a hero in the campaign finance reform movement. But right now we're working on voting rights.
And we also have Barbara Peterson coming in to speak with us remote. Hi, Barbara. How we doing?
Good. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well. And you're going to be working on?
So I'm coming here from Nonviolent Citizen Action, which is a grassroots organization, and we educate folks on what nonviolent action is and how to build stronger and more effective strategies to wield power.
And we also have Brendan with RAD, otherwise known as Rights and Democracy New Hampshire. How are we doing today?
Very well. Thank you for having me on the show.
I thank you.
But Rights and Democracy is a grassroots member-led organization. We wear many hats, but most nowadays we are focused on protecting the integrity of our democracy.
So what I'd like to do at this point is go through with each of you what we're doing this election here.
Well, hi, Richard. Open Democracy has been working the last several months on making sure that our absentee process is user-friendly and available to voters in New Hampshire. And we're in the process of shifting right now because we're at the end of the election cycle. We're just about to vote, and we are trying to make sure that when the ballots are counted, that the election workers are following all the rules, that they are being fair in the way that they are evaluating those ballots. There's sometimes judgment involved when you have a ballot that might be missing a signature, or maybe they've signed it in two places on their absentee ballot. We're there to make sure that those ballots can get counted, and then on election day we're also working to try and make sure both the inside and the outside of the polling places that everybody's following the rules, both the people that are showing up to observe the election as well as the election workers themselves.
I think when we talk about, and Brendan really beautifully said, about what we need to do and why we are legitimately concerned, I think what I'll talk about is what do we need to do should there be a coup. And I want to be very clear what I mean by a coup. A coup is not Trump or anybody else giving hints or making noise about possibly illegitimately seizing power. A coup happens when Trump says, I am the winner, I am going to stay in office, I refuse to step down, before the results have come in or in spite of the results that show him a loser. So a coup does not occur until Trump illegally claims to be the winner. Before that time, then yes, we really have to make sure that we hold people to the process of voting. But should there be a coup, I think that there are two things that we really need to make sure that we focus on in our opposition. One is that we don't have an over-reliance on street protests and street demonstrations. Yes, they're important, and yes, they can be helpful, but we cannot over-rely on them because they are easily ignored. We need to instead really start to ramp up and engage in nonviolent, disruptive tactics, which include non-cooperation and is to focus on trainings and education. We need to learn how to de-escalate. De-escalate these militia groups, these paramilitaries. We need to de-escalate when there are police situations that are not acting legally or in the interests of the safety of the people. We need to be able to de-escalate ourselves to make sure that we don't get into that fight or flight response, which is natural. So we need trainings to be able to engage in these very serious actions that can be frightening or uncomfortable. We need to be able to carry them out in a way that is dignified, that is calm, and that is strong and non-violent. We need to understand the power of nonviolence. A lot of times people don't really believe in the power of nonviolence, and so they think that they need guns to supplement or in case nonviolence doesn't work. But nonviolence is powerful enough. As a matter of fact, research shows it's more powerful than violence. So we need to learn how to do it so that it is in fact more effective and more powerful than violence. It's been done throughout history, throughout the world, and there's no reason we can't also do that should there be a coup. And again, I really want to emphasize, I hope there isn't, and I hope all of this organizing and planning for opposition to a coup, I hope this is over preparation.
So Barbara, you're speaking about a coup and what possibly could, well, what is it that, there's a possible scenario? What is this coup?
Couple of scenarios, and I think Brendan can also talk to this as well, but one scenario is Trump may say that he is the legitimate winner, even though not all votes have been counted. So we have national groups like Protect the Results, Choose Democracy, and here in New Hampshire we have Open Democracy, who's really making sure that that election process is fair and that all votes count. He may also decide that it's too close, that he doesn't trust the results, and so he's declaring himself a winner because he can't believe the results. He has said repeatedly that he will not trust any election results that don't declare him as the winner. So this is not hyperbole, this is taking him at his word. The electoral process also, he may count on the electoral process to give him votes that vote against the people's interest in what the people have actually voted for. So there are various scenarios outlined beautifully in the Hold the Line pamphlet and in a lot of the other Choose Democracy and some pamphlets that we are also creating in New Hampshire Democracy Defenders on the various scenarios that could occur. And we really hope that we are over-preparing. We really hope none of this is necessary. And if Biden wins and there's a peaceful transition of power, fantastic. If Trump legitimately wins, then he ought to be president, then he wins. So we are not looking to engage in any sort of illegal action. We are, in fact, trying to protect the peaceful transition of power.
And Brendan, you'll be doing this as well?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and actually, I think Barbara stated our mission pretty well there. So I'd hate to be redundant. But yeah, so specifically Rights and Democracy, we've been involved in the process of first coming up with the most likely scenarios on November 3rd and beyond. And then second, thinking how we are going to respond to those scenarios. And from my perspective, we have, I say, 3 steps to take in order to secure the legitimacy of our democracy. The first and easiest one is to vote. If you haven't voted early or absentee yet, I would highly recommend that you can go down to your town or city hall. If you're unsure whether or not you can still vote in person there, I would call the town or city clerk to check first. So obviously making sure that your vote is cast is a great way to ensure the legitimacy of this election. Second is being ready to march and to demonstrate the day after the election if Trump refuses to accept the results should he lose. And then third is a sustained action, which essentially going forward, we let the folks of this country know that we are not going to accept an illegal democracy here, and that we're not going to support an illegitimate president who won't step down.
So we've had both the president and vice president pretty much, they haven't come out and say that there's going to be a smooth transition of power. Mm-hmm. I've watched both of them, and that hasn't been said yet. In regards to the absentee voting, that's still going on, and
Yeah, the absentee voting is going on, but as Mr. Lemay said a moment ago, your time is running out for absentee. So basically, it is, if you don't have it in, if you still have a ballot, you need to drop it off, and you can walk it into the polls by 5 p.m., before 5 p.m. on Election Day, or drop it off at the clerk's on the Monday before Election Day. We're really starting to focus now on the shenanigans that are happening, the voter suppression and intimidation that we hope doesn't happen. I'm hopeful, like Barbara is. We hope this doesn't happen, but we're trying to prepare and mobilize a large number of people to monitor both the inside and the outside of the polling places. In places like Manchester, where there's an immigrant population, they are targets for voter intimidation. And there have already been some minor things that have happened, and some letters that have been sent around. And we are trying to train people to recognize those things and to speak up. And and it's not just about the trained people, but also people going into the polls. If you're going to vote and you see something that's not right, I'm glad to say that the state of New Hampshire has hotlines that you're able to call to report things that are, let's say somebody is brandishing a club or a weapon of some sort and trying to keep people from going into the polls. The Attorney General has a hotline number, 866-868-3703. If you should see something like that, you need to report it. The other person you can go to is the moderator. Every polling place has a moderator in New Hampshire. And you can go to the moderator and complain and say, this is what I saw. So those are the types of things that Open Democracy Election Protection Task Force people are looking for. And we have our volunteers. We have some volunteers that came to us from a national coalition. They're New Hampshire people, but they're joined this national coalition. So we're hoping that we're able to field over 100 people in the polls who will be monitoring several locations.
yeah, I can't help but notice that you didn't mention post offices there. Here in New Hampshire, I know the Manchester, I believe, had was it 4 machines removed, 3 of them sorting?
Well, there's some good news and some bad news here. So the good news is the Postal Service has rolled back all of those things that they, with the policy changes and the equipment, they've been told that they have to put it all back. But that's not going to happen before the election. So we are telling everybody, if you have not mailed it, if you have not turned in your absentee ballot, don't mail it. Bring it directly to the clerk or bring it in on Election Day by 5 p.m. to your polls.
I know that in the beginning there, we were saying that people could drop it off at the post office if it had a local slot, or possibly the post office might have a separate collection just for ballots. And that's been kind of foggy, what's going on.
Well, there have been voter suppression games that are being played on a national level here, and they got their hand caught in the cookie jar with voter suppression tactics being run by the administration to slow the mail down. So people have fought back both in the courts and through our elected officials, and I'm happy to say our New Hampshire congressional delegation has written to the Postmaster General and has gotten some of those concessions, but there have also been federal lawsuits that have addressed this matter as well. But it's not going to happen in time, and we don't have once the ballots, if had you mailed it a week ago, you would have been fine. But now we're so close to the election, just to be on the safe side, it's best to bring it in or to your clerk or to the polls on election day by 5.
So there was another item going on. I mean, besides the notice of it's time to drop them off in person. So now the local box, the local slot is not, that's going to a sorting place now. It's not.
Well, this is all fluid, Richard. So this has all been changed in the last few days. As of Monday, the 26th, the rules were changed by at the national level for hand canceling of ballots. So beginning this past Monday and until the election. But we still would recommend that you bring it in directly if you can.
So besides the post offices and that, it's also, I mean, a lot of states, you don't get the results the day of the election. And it almost seems the way it's questioning the accuracy of mail-in votes. I mean, it's less than 1% that these things are, that process is abused.
Far less than 1%.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that, at that point, that's your concern, Barbara and Brendan.
Yeah, I can default to Barbara if she wants to go first.
I'm concerned about the process itself, the voting process not being fair. Is that what you're saying?
That we don't have a result the day of the election. And it sounds like one of the concerns is that someone might claim that there's a result at that point.
Yeah, somebody, let's just name it. I think the only one who's threatened is Trump, may claim that he's won before all the results have come in. And that's a scenario that could play out. It's played out before in history. This is sometimes called a soft coup. We don't have a military takeover. We have an administrative takeover who simply refuses to step down or allow the election process to continue and to take place and to be carried out fairly.
So elections are never called on the night of election day. By our state constitution, and maybe Brian can correct me if I am wrong here, we have to have all of the votes counted here in New Hampshire before any of our ballot inspectors can leave the polling location. That case is not true in other states, where states like Washington, it can take even a couple weeks for all of the votes to be counted. Generally, when we see elections being called, it's usually called by the media. They know from internal polling or just general trends whether or not a state should be called for the Democrat or Republican. So the biggest fear is that folks that are going to vote for Biden are going to be more likely to vote by mail. And Trump will win with the people that are going to vote in person on election day. And there is a legitimate fear that Trump will see the results from the in-person voting before the mail-in votes are counted and try to shut down the process of those votes being counted. And these are things that he has openly talked about, just completely just off the cuff, and we believe that he means what he says here. And the Republicans have a history of disenfranchising voters, and they have an interest in making sure that as few votes are counted as possible. And they've done everything they can to undermine the ease and legitimacy of mail-in voting, either from attempting to dismantle the United States Postal Service. There are counties in Texas with higher BIPOC populations where there's only one ballot box for hundreds of thousands of people, while you have counties with only thousands of people with a box that you can drop off your ballots in. So there's a real concern that Donald Trump doesn't care about making sure that every vote is counted. He just wants to make it look like he won, no matter what the will of the people is. So this is what we're seeking to do on our coalition, our Democracy Defense Coalition, is to get people here in New Hampshire just ready to act. We don't know what the results of the election are going to be. We don't know how Donald Trump is going to react. We don't know how he's going to direct his supporters to act. So we need to have a broad coalition of people from many different backgrounds ready to act depending on the scenario. And there is also concern that Biden does win, but Trump supporters fail to accept the results of those election results. So we have to be ready to stand up and to potentially de-escalate any violence that they might try to enact on us. And we do this through peaceful means. Quite frankly, we do not believe that violence is going to be the answer because it will legitimize their cause. Trump and far-right groups want us to use violence so that they can use it on us. And as of right now, they are much better at committing violence. Right-wing extremism is the number one cause of domestic terrorism in the United States, according to the FBI. And we saw the plot of the Michigan governor. There was a far-right group that wanted to kidnap her, that wanted to completely wipe away the will of the voters of Michigan in an attempt to stage a coup on a statewide level. And the rhetoric we've seen from the president indicates that they are ready to do that in other states as well.
So what we're doing right now is also focusing on a fair and clean election and also preparing to mobilize should there be a coup. And so what we did in Nonviolent Citizen Action was we met with folks from RAD and 350 and New Hampshire Youth Movement to start a coalition. And I think that Brandon will be able to speak also more about the coalition. But my focus in this coalition's work to defend democracy is to do two things, as we learn from history, on what we need to do to oppose a coup. We need to, one, deny legitimacy. So we need to deny Trump any moral or political right to authority should he make an illegal power grab. And the second thing we need to do is to refuse to cooperate with an illegal government. And that really includes having civil servants at all levels, including judges and elected officials and police and military. Trump will need all of these folks to consolidate them so that he can have control over society. And so we need these folks to not cooperate with Trump. We also need people in society, workers, both union and non-union, as well as major media outlets, to not cooperate. We need to disrupt the normal and smooth functioning of society so that Trump knows that he does not have legitimacy and he does not have our cooperation. So this is not brand new stuff. This is stuff we saw in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end of the 20th century with Germany, with France, with the Soviet Union. Coup governments are typically very, very vulnerable in the first few weeks, and they really count on our passive support, on us continuing business as usual. And we need to not do that. We need to engage right away if there is a coup to say we deny your legitimacy and we refuse to cooperate by engaging in massive strikes and massive disruptions and massive shutdowns.
One of the best things we have here in New Hampshire is the integrity of the New Hampshire voting system.
I'm optimistic that, it's our friends and neighbors who do the counting of the ballots here in New Hampshire, right? It's local folks that are doing this. And it's not the boogeyman. We don't have any, dark rooms where, the ballots are hustled away. That doesn't happen here. And I expect that in New Hampshire that we might not have a result on election night. It might be a couple of days later. And I will prepare everybody that we're going to have some recounts, and we're getting people already. We're getting volunteers ready to be able to participate in those recounts and observe those recounts to make sure that everything is above board. I hope that the scenario that we're talking about with potential violence or any kind of effort to overthrow the government in a sense with the coup, I hope that doesn't come to pass. I fully support the fact that we're preparing for it because of the statements that people have made. And we hope that this our election system passes that constitutional crisis. And I think we should all do our part. Every voter in New Hampshire should be doing their part to make sure that our system is sound so we can avoid all of this. But we need to be ready. We need to be prepared. So speak up and do your part.
So just to add to a couple of things that have been said, we had in Michigan that kidnapping thing that also took place in Kansas as well, I believe. And so this wasn't a one incident either. And poll protectors, we're making sure that people are safe at the polls. We're making sure that people are trained to observe, that people are participating at the polling locations. What groups can we point people towards? Open Democracy is working hard on the polling places, location observers. And if the people want to be trained and aware of potentially other scenarios, where would they go?
A whole group of people who are part of this coalition, this New Hampshire Democracy Defenders, and they include New Hampshire Youth Movement, Rights and Democracy, 350 New Hampshire, Nonviolent Citizen Action, Black Lives Matter Nashua, Black Lives Matter Seacoast, Black Lives Matter Manchester, Never Again Action New Hampshire, New Hampshire Progressive Coalition, Main Street Coalition, American Friends Services Committee New Hampshire, Granite State Interfaith Action Fund, Poor People's Campaign, and Indivisible, and there are more joining. So far, those are the groups in New Hampshire that are coming together and engaging in collective visioning, collective strategizing, collective planning, and collective action.
I thank everybody for watching us. At the end of the show here, I also put it up on YouTube. At that point, if you were to watch my show on YouTube, there's a description you can open up. Within that description, we'll have the links for these other groups for you to pursue further. I want to thank you all for watching this show. Be safe, be healthy. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.